My guest today is a very familiar face to Francophiles everywhere. Whether you've seen her on House Hunters International matching people with their dream homes in France, attended one of her après-midi speaker series in Paris, or have been inspired by one of her 3 weekly newsletters, Adrian Leeds feels like a good friend, a supportive and resourceful friend who has been in France for more than 25 years and who can't wait to connect you with everyone she has met along the way. Adrian doesn't shy away from risks and knows how it feels to take a leap of faith to live in a foreign country without speaking the language, which is why her clients think of her as a confidante as well as a property expert to help them navigate and interpret the myriad laws, rules, and regulations of the French real estate system. Who hasn't dreamt about owning a pied-à-terre à Paris, a luxurious villa on the Côte d'Azur, or a Bastide with character in Provence? If you can dream it, Adrian will find it. I am honored and delighted that she is joining us today. Welcome, Adrian, to the Paris Undressed podcast. Welcome, Adrian, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Catherine. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Let's start from the very beginning, where you grew up and what did you dream about as a young girl?
Oh, what an interesting question. Well, I grew up in New Orleans. Most people know that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool New Orleanian. But my dream, literally from Barbie, remember Barbie?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a fashion designer. It was the only thing I could think about. And I actually became one. So I ended up studying at FIT in New York, and I graduated in fashion design. And unfortunately, I never did anything with that.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, as somebody who, many young girls dream about fashion, but to actually go through the study of it, what was your relationship yourself then with your own body to fashion and to clothes?
Oh gosh, I don't remember at all what my relationship was to my own body. All I could think about was designing fabulous things that everyone in the world would wear. But I never actually realized that dream. I graduated with a degree and ended up going into advertising and marketing and utilizing my illustration and design skills, but not my fashion sense. I was working for Levi Strauss, so we were into jeans at the time. We're talking early 70s.
Yeah, the 504s.
Oh, definitely. 501s, the 504s. I knew all the jeans by their product codes, believe it or not. And we even had, stone-washed, pre-washed jeans, which were experimental at the time, in an outlet store that sold for $2.38.
Back in the day.
Yes.
I remember growing up in Canada that the lingerie department was on the same floor right next to the jean department.
Oh, well, that makes perfect sense.
And jeans are not an easy thing to fit for women, and also provide a problem in finding the right sort of style. It's never just a pair of jeans, right?
No, not anymore.
What about, so fashion for you was about theater, perhaps, sort of dressing up and looking fabulous, about making a statement?
Possibly. I always had an artistic background. I started in art and illustration and always interested in color. Lots and lots of color.
What's your favorite color?
Ooh, well, it used to be purple and I hated red, and then it became red, and so I still love the color red, of course, and I think it's a color that I wear well, but just give me clear color and I'm happy.
All right. And is the color something for you that you live in the same color as the space that you live in?
Well, I have a lot of color around me at all times. My Paris apartment is black and white and gold and silver and red exclusively. And I have an apartment in Nice, and it is absolutely all Provençal colors. So it's yellow and orange and green and cobalt blue and, and lavender and all of Provence.
So it reflects the energy of the paysage around you.
Yeah, and I find it very, very happy. Walk in and all that color, and it's just impossible to be depressed.
What 3 words describe your personality?
Wow. I probably should have been more prepared for these.
Not at all. It's all about the spontaneity of what comes to mind. It's not a trick question. It's just what comes to mind when you think about Adrian.
Optimistic and positive. Of course, that goes with being optimistic, I imagine. Open-minded. I like to think of myself as very open-minded. And a risk taker.
What's the last risk that you took?
Oh, I take risks every single day, but they're always calculated. Especially, in business, if you're in business, then you're always taking risks. If you move to France, you've taken a risk. This is something I talk about with my clients often, because if you're very risk averse, you're not as likely interested in making such a drastic move, to a country like France from the US. And so almost everyone I work with or deal with has some fairly high level of risk taking. You'd have to, like yourself. I'm sure you're the same way.
Yes, but I've learned that spending time worrying about the risk that might happen that I don't expect is actually worse than just taking a big leap of faith and jumping into the risk. It's much more fun just to sort of see what happens moving forward rather than being cautious.
Well, then you're a risk. Then you are a risk taker, right? And less fearless.
Yes, in some things. I flipped a coin and moved to France 4 weeks later, as many of us did, and you did too.
And how many years ago was that?
Well, we share the same anniversary almost. I'm 30 plus years here.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, because of a heads or tails, So, and you moved to Paris more than 25 years ago.
Yeah, just had my 27th anniversary.
Well, happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
And I believe that you probably didn't speak French that well, although perhaps growing up. No, not at all.
Not at all.
Tell us how young Adrian learned how to speak French and become a real estate expert.
Well, those are two very different situations. I had 4 years of high school French, which I don't even count. I had a teacher who I think was Italian origin with a heavy New Orleans accent. And I was one of the best students in class, but that doesn't mean anything at all. High school written French is of no value. And when I came to France, I realized that I really didn't want to be stuck in a classroom all day learning French. So I ended up starting a French-English conversation group called Parler Parler that we ran for 20 years, believe it or not. And it was my way of learning French without having to be in a classroom. And it was also a way of earning money, which I needed to do. And that actually worked. So it worked in terms of conversational French, but I still didn't really read and write very well. I never mastered any of that. But the truth is, I don't really need it. So
for your business, no.
I do everything in English, pretty much, with the exception of legal documents, legalese. And now we get to cheat, because there's this wonderful translation program called DeepL, DeepL, that is brilliant. And I've gotten so lazy that I don't even bother to try to read the French. It's horrible.
Well, legalese French isn't the most inspiring necessarily either. Do you read in French?
No.
Literature? No. Okay.
No.
Headlines and menus and life in Paris, of course, but la lecture.
Look, everyone I know is a writer. Okay. Just about all of my friends have books out. I have this enormous library, which you can see behind me, of books that were written by, Americans living in France. And I have enough to read in English. I don't have time for the French.
Has there been a vocabulary word or a French word or expression that's actually not changed you, but actually you've integrated into your daily life? I'm thinking in particular of a word for me, such as non dit, the unsaid. And it wasn't necessarily something that I had thought about before I learned the word in French. And now understanding that word, I do integrate it. I see it much more in my daily life and in my own self-expression. And I'm wondering if there is a French expression or vocabulary word that just, once you learned it, it just seems like such an obvious and natural part of your vocabulary that you've just adopted it now?
Actually, there are a lot of French words that are so much better than their English counterparts to describe something that I tend to use them all the time. And then someone will look at me like, what are you talking about? Like the word coordinates. Like you'll ask someone, what are your coordinates? And they'll look at you like you're crazy. But in French, coordinate means, name, address, email, phone number, like all the ways of contacting you, right? So that's one of those French words that just seems so perfect.
Yeah, that groups together a big idea in one very simple word.
Which doesn't happen often in French, but yes.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things like that for sure. But my go-to word is "ah bon." So if I don't really understand someone very clearly, I just sort of have to pretend that I did, and I can always say "ah bon," and it seems to work.
And they might continue on a bit longer so that you can actually figure out by filling in a few more blanks what indeed the conversation is about. And your first steps into the real estate 25 years ago or 26 years ago, you came to France for a short stay. And here we are speaking today.
Yeah, I came on a 1-year sabbatical and never left, which is really nutty. But real estate, I didn't happen to it happened to me. I was working for International Living, running their Paris office, and their readers came to us and said, well, have you got someone there who can help us buy real estate? And I didn't know how to do that. I mean, I had gone through the motions of buying my own apartment, but I didn't really know anything about real estate. So I hired someone who did. And at the time I was writing about real estate, but I didn't really know anything about the process. But through hiring someone who could go out and help a client find the property and then go through the purchase process and then write about it, I had to learn a lot about it myself. And then I continued to grow that part of the business and, continue to hire people. And so I'm still basically doing the same thing. At this point, I'm certainly very knowledgeable about it, but it's my staff who actually go out there and do the on the ground work. I'm not the one, searching for the properties myself. However, I've become the seal of approval because, and I think this comes from my graphic background, I can walk into a property, an apartment or a house, and I don't see the walls. I don't see what's there. I only see the way it should be. Like I can reconfigure it in my mind visually, just how the rooms should actually flow and function. And I don't see the bad wallpaper or paint or any of that. I go beyond. And for me, it's just the bones. And so that's actually been really helpful because I can somehow discern what's really a good property and what's not by cutting to the chase and not getting wrapped up in the surface. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You've seen the inside of many, many homes and glimpsed into the daily life of many people's lives. What have your clients taught you about interior decorating and color? And what have you integrated into your own home and lifestyle as a result?
Oh, my clients have taught me that they're afraid of color, that most people tend to want to stick to kind of neutral tones rather than really expressing themselves in color. And I am continually trying to encourage people to let the color into their lives. I mean, how many gray sofas have we seen? It's just because it's safe. You can kind of work around it. But I've also then seen how the color makes people happy, how it feels good. And if they just let that color in, it would be amazing. But it's something I battle all the time.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Paris Undressed. Well, we're back to that idea of taking risks again. We do tend to want to play it safe, or perhaps even think about what makes most commercial sense, or how to decorate is definitely part of creativity, and many of us don't actually believe we're creative. So it's a whole nother learning curve, and actually it's just a form of self-expression.
Absolutely.
And your role, you're a property consultant, but you're really more than that for your clients. You're a confidant. You know, people let you into your lives. You're taking them to a foreign country. And many people dream of moving to France. But what makes your clients fulfill their ultimate dream?
Well, when they come to us, they're clearly hesitant. It's scary. You know, it can be really frightening to change your life in such a drastic way and move to a country where the language is different, the culture is different. Everything you're about to experience is completely different than you might have in the US or Canada. And the fact that we have confidence, that we know how to do this, and they can trust us to lead them through this process in the right way is a big deal. We're holding their hands all the way through it, and they're not alone in it, and it makes a huge difference. That's what I see.
And over the years, people have wanted to come to Paris. Is that still the case, or are other parts of France opening up and becoming more appealing to foreigners?
Definitely opening up, particularly the South, particularly Nice and other parts of the South. I took the path to Nice about 10 years ago myself, with the idea that it might be a good retirement spot for me, that maybe there was, some business opportunities, and because I loved the city and I love the beach and I love the weather. And just by writing about it, I've been able to bring a lot more people down to the South, and they are now experiencing a different France. So there's Paris. We all know Paris, and Paris is probably the most amazing, greatest city in the whole world. I love every minute being here, and the culture that it offers is, second to none. I'll put any city up against Paris in terms of culture. But the South has a very sunny, happy, relaxed, carefree resort feeling to it that is, I guess, the difference between New York and Miami is sort of the difference between Paris and Nice. And it opens up a different world. I don't think one should exchange one for the other. I think one should have both to really take it all in. And it's a different France. Culturally, it's more sort of, it has the Italian flavor. It's very, very strong there because, of course, at one time it was part of Italy. And so I have been told that I become a different person in Nice. I don't know if that's true, but I've been told that.
Well, I was curious about that. Yeah, is it because of the colors that you've picked as well, and your personality traits that you describe as being open and positive? There is something about that sunny disposition of the South.
Well, the people there definitely are. They are, they're happier. They treat tourists, friendlier. They're not as stressed out. And I find the moment I land there, I feel like I'm on vacation, even if I'm not, a lot less stressed. You can always, walk over to the Promenade des Anglais and walk along the waterfront and feel really calm and happy no matter what. It's amazing.
Yeah, so you divide your time between the two places right now.
I do more and more, spending more and more time down in Nice. We also have a very serious clientele happening in Nice. More people are buying in Nice than they are in Paris.
And is there another area of France that's sort of an unexpected treasure that people can perhaps explore more of?
Well, Americans tend to also like Provence, the countryside of Provence, which is quite beautiful. But there's a lot of France to love. Lots and lots and lots. We have clients who are, moving to Strasbourg or Bordeaux or Normandy and into the Southwest. So they're really all over the place, but generally tend to congregate more in Paris, Nice, and Provence than anywhere else. This has been my personal experience.
Who has been the most influential to you in building and shaping your business?
Well, I would have to go back and not say business. I would have to just in terms of who would be influential in just shaping life in general, which then leads to business. I am a student of Eckhart Tolle, the philosopher Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now. At least, I guess, 15 years ago, I adopted these concepts and the concept of living in the present and using the past, which is unchangeable, just for our learning and information, and to look towards the future without fearing it because it's completely illusory and it's only in our heads, has made a huge difference in my life in general, which I think has also contributed to whatever successes I've had in business, because it has made me rather fearless. I can focus like we're focusing right now. Nothing else that's going on matters. That's really important, so that everything that I do, I think I do better when I'm focused that way. And I don't have many unhappy moments in my life as a result either. It's very calming and stabilizing.
The now, the present moment is one of those very obvious words, but not so easy to stay in. Do you have any rituals or practices that help you stay in the present? How have you trained or created habits that help you do just that?
In the beginning, I was just sort of listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he offers, ways of becoming very present. So one of them, for example, is, let's say you're sitting in the metro, right? Rather than looking at your phone, reading emails, text messages, anything like that, just sit there and just look around, look at people, take in the sights, the smells, the everything. Just focus on that moment. And I would do those kinds of exercises just to sort of, in a way, meditate. It's a form of meditation without actually meditating. So when I tried to meditate, I learned that I didn't need to go, and because I was already there. I could immediately do that. I could stop my thoughts from even happening and clear my head completely, which is quite a useful thing to be able to do.
Well, absolutely, because the thoughts we tend to think of as truths. And then once you go down that rabbit hole, then you've created a whole entirely different story about what actually is happening right now and in reality.
Oh, and that's all that's all they are. They are just thoughts.
They are just thoughts.
That's all they are. They're not reality at all. Exactly.
And the magic actually of the now is that in paying attention to the present and the now, you actually are creating your future, so that you are nourishing it by creating more nows.
See, we don't learn this in the United States. Americans are always taught to look towards the future. They're never taught that the present...
Plan for the future.
Everything is the future.
Yeah, everything is the future. Your life, everything.
And they never say, you know what, you should be happy with who you are now. No one ever says that. You're always working towards some illusory thing that's out there, rather than focusing...
Or making amends for the errors of the past.
No, it's really interesting. I think it's part of our American culture to never actually just enjoy the present. Now, granted, the French have more of the ability to do that because they have a much bigger safety net. They don't worry so much about college education for their kids, which is going to cost a small fortune. Or, they're having enough health insurance so that if they get sick, they'll be well covered. They have the retirement in place. These are things, the safety net in France, that enables the French to be more present and not so worried about the future. So I think they have a heads up on this for that reason.
Yes, but they also have just in their innate cultural upbringing, there's, if I think about time, for instance, if you and I organize a time to meet in North America, it would be considered extraordinarily rude if either one of us showed up 1 minute late. 5 minutes would be sort of some raised eyebrows. In France, if it's a beautiful sunny day and we're to meet and I'm 15 minutes late because I've been sitting on a terrace in the sun, you perhaps might be annoyed because you were busy that particular day, but you would understand how that happened and have probably known to be in the sunny side of a terrace on your own time. So there's this expectation that the wonder of life is to be enjoyed at that very moment. It's not necessarily the best excuse, but it's an understanding that, mais bien sûr, il fait beau,
right.
you know?
And there you are. And if you're in a cafe having a glass of wine or whatever, then you should just be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, what's bad about that? Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. But the senses are certainly something that I didn't even know existed before moving to France. And then as you just absorb them, the proximity of everything, the smells from the boulangerie, the scents, the people live together, live much closer together. And the texture of everything isn't parking lots and closed off malls and cars. We're more or less kind of converged together. And because life happens in the street, the texture of life and of the senses are more layered just around us.
Well, you've hit on a very interesting point, because I talk about this all the time. You know, when you're living in a suburban society in the US, which is just about everywhere with the exception of New York City, you are living in a bubble. You know, you go from your house to your garage to your car to the shopping center or the supermarket, you get back in your car, you're always in a bubble. And our lives here are not in that bubble at all. We are in cafe life, we're on the street, we're in public transportation, we are really communing, right? And that for me is the single biggest difference in our physical lives and why this is such a fantastic lifestyle. It's a lifestyle I could never give up. I could never go back to living in a bubble. I never want to go back to living in a bubble like that. It's just, I would feel lost and alone.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Paris Undressed. I know that when we bought our home at Moulins many years ago, we found a secret room. And when we asked the owner about it, he told us, il y a des choses honnêtes, mais pas légales. There are things that are honest, but not legal. As a Canadian, I grew up thinking about rules as something to follow. And living in France has given a different perspective of rules, with often the suggestion that not following them is the better choice. What do rules mean to you in the real estate business?
Oh my gosh, but I have to go, wait a minute. I have to go beyond this, okay? Because my readers of my newsletters know that I talk about this quite often, the difference between English law and Napoleonic Code. So English law is based on what's forbidden. That's what the US and Canada has. Napoleonic Code is based on what's allowed. Now, let's take these two ideas. If your legal system is based on what's forbidden, which is US, then you don't steal, you don't kill, you don't do this, you don't do that, and then everything else is possible and open. So it's a very kind of open-minded way of looking at life and law, and it really provides for a lot of freedoms. Now, with Napoleonic Code, which is based on what's allowed, you have to follow a set of rules, and anything outside of that is forbidden, which for us as North Americans could be like being put in a straitjacket and then being asked to perform somersaults, which is what the French have to do. So they find this legal system just as cumbersome as we find it, even if they think they're used to it. So they're always looking for ways of getting around those laws without really getting around them, because that's what's completely illegal. Whereas, see, we can do that, right? With English law, we have what's called a loophole. And a loophole is a way around the law, but not with Napoleonic Code. So that straitjacket can be really tough, you know, and they deal with it every single day. And we experience this culture clash every single day. And if we take any culture clash that we've come up against and just apply this principle, then you'd understand why it's happening at all. You know, why is it that when on the menu it says steak frites and you want to change the frites for salade and they say pas possible? Okay, you know it's It's possible. Of course it's possible. They have salad in the kitchen, but it's against their rule, whatever their rule is. And they're not going to do it. So they're not going to make the customer happy and break the rule because they can't. And we just see this every day over and over and over and over again, especially if you've ever dealt with attorneys and dealing with legal situations or contracts. Their main job is not to find the ways around the laws. It's the way to follow the law. So you think the French are not following the rules? Oh man, I think they are big time. Way more than we can imagine.
Yeah, I think there's a flexibility in the rule. At the beginning, though, I sort of would have, the rule for me was always something that you didn't want to get too close to in case it was broken. I think of a traffic light, a silly traffic light. And in Canada, the intersections are so enormous compared to France as well. But when the light turns yellow, people stop. And the light turns yellow in France, it means there's still time to get through before it's red. So there's this stretching of just where the rule starts and where the rule ends.
As much as they can, because they're living in this straitjacket. So any little movement is what they're seeking. Yeah. It's a tough thing though for us to deal with, culturally speaking.
And it reminds me of Picasso's learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist.
Oh, I like that. I agree.
Right? So so that sort of gives another perspective as well.
Well, keep in mind though that the laws, there are so many laws in France that they just don't enforce them all. It wasn't until Carla Bruni was First Lady that the law that required women to wear skirts, was broken, was actually removed from the books. So until then, it was illegal for women to wear pants because wearing skirts was required. Now, of course, that law was not enforced, right? Not for many, many years, but it still sat on the books. And there are lots and lots and lots of those.
Let's talk about après-midi. In 2003, you started hosting a monthly meetup called Après-midi in a cafe in the Marais that has become the ultimate rendezvous and community for Francophiles. Tell us about that journey, how it started, and how it's evolved today.
Oh, I like hearing that. It's the ultimate meetup. Wow.
Well, it's the ultimate meet. It was the meetup before meetups even existed.
There was, at the time, there was still Jim Haynes' Sunday night dinner soirees, and Patricia LaPlante Collins was doing, at the time, the African-American literary soirees, which then morphed into just, literary soirees. Mine happened because I would get emails from our readers who said, I'm coming to Paris, can you come have a cup of coffee? Well, I couldn't stop and go have a cup of coffee with every one of my readers. So my then assistant, who's still working with me, and I thought, why don't we just do like a monthly thing and have people come for coffee, a coffee gathering? And so we found a little spot not far from me, which was at the time the Web Bar. It was an internet cafe, and we promoted it in the newsletters, and we actually had like 16 or 20 people who showed up. But at the time, there was no speaker. It was just coffee, just a way to get together. And that was the beginning. Then we started doing it every single month with the exception of August. And we've now we moved out of the web cafe 2 months later. And literally, it's been in the same cafe since 2003. Every single month. With the exception of during the confinement periods, we've spent the last year doing it on Zoom and opening it up to a much broader audience. And we've had over 100 people at each of the Zooms, which is fantastic.
Well, it is fantastic. I've attended both, the in-person and on the Zoom.
And you've spoken. You've spoken at one of them.
Yes, and I've spoken. I have. And there's a familiarity and connection that even if you don't know people, that just happens in Paris a lot by simply sharing the same language, breaks a barrier and creates a connection of familiarity. And with the Zoom, I'm not sure if you expected that or not, but as you said, hundreds of people. And suddenly we're connecting with this community that felt like a family around the world, and listening to you all interact. It speaks like around a dinner table. People are very forthcoming in their questions. It's not a stilted conversation anyway. It's very friendly, yet the information gets transmitted. You've come back now to the cafe. You've had your first. You just did. Is there anything from the Zoom experience that might continue or?
We really considered how we could do both, how we could do it live and on Zoom, and it just became complicated. We have loved our Zoom sessions because we were able to reach a lot of people, all, from California to Australia. But there's something special about being live. And we're happy to be back. We're live. We had it with Susan Herman Loomis, the chef. She talked about her new book and her experience in her culinary life in France, which was really fun and fascinating. And people could physically sit across from one another, talk, meet, become friends. And so it's a wonderful thing to be able to bring people together like that. There were regulars who have, been coming for years, others who we've never met, who were just visiting. And it gives us a chance to really get to know these people. The community, the American community in France, is the most amazing group of people. When I say American, by the way, I mean North American. I don't exclude. Canadians are not excluded here by any stretch of the imagination. What I find is that these are people who have so much in common. They are birds of a feather. They're travelers. They're well-educated. They're risk takers. They're open-minded. They're politically mostly on the left. They have so much in common that it's easy for them to meet and relate and make friends in an instant. There's just nothing quite like it. And I've also seen that within the American community in France, there is no dividing line between black, white, pink, you name it. It doesn't matter, what age you are, what race or religion or anything. We are just Americans. And we're all experiencing the same thing. And there's a camaraderie that you don't see in the US, which I don't believe is a melting pot. I think it's a salad. I think the parts are still very separated. I don't think that it's blended by any stretch of the imagination.
No, listening to you speak, it makes me think about the idea that when we come together as foreigners, we immediately go to what we share in common, as opposed to underscoring or underlying our differences.
That's right.
And yes, as the age, as our color, religion, all of that just comes as part of a narrative, but it's more like we found each other in the same geographical spot in our lifetime. How is that? And it's about sort of, how did you get here? What brought you here? And what do you love about Paris and life and love and everything?
Well, and it's a very, I'm missing the word for it. It makes one feel very much at home and welcomed. And it's instant friendships. Instant. I could never have met as many people and had as many friends living in the United States as I have here. It would have been impossible. I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee for 14 years, and it's a small town and you can get to know a lot of people, but I can count all my friends on one hand from that experience because we just didn't relate. And I literally now have, I don't know, I know thousands of people. I have hundreds of close friends. I never feel alone, never alone or never for want for something to do.
That's lovely. I mean, what a lovely addition to being able to live in a city that you want to, and then to be able to continue to make friends as life goes on. It's
nonstop. Just like, everything that's going on in Paris is nonstop.
You produce 3 newsletters a week. The Nouvelle Lettre, Parler Paris, Parler Nice.
Well, no, not anymore.
Oh,
we changed the name.
Sorry.
I know, it's okay. I was Parler Paris from the beginning, but with the launch of this new social media website called parler.com, which had such a negative, a negative outlook. I decided to let that go. And so now I'm just branding under Adrian Leeds Nouvelle Lettre. But nouvelle lettre is a made-up word. It means newsletter. It's a bastardized French in a way. And it was coined by a friend of mine, a guy named Tim Smith, who's an author. And I liked it so much that I trademarked it. And so I have now my own French word, nouvelle lettre.
Well, it sounds as if it's been a word in the vocabulary since the forever of time. So it's the perfect word when you feel like it's just part of your everyday vocabulary. But these, so you, how many?
3. I write 3 a week.
So that's just an incredible amount of writing. What do you love most about the writing?
Oh, it's kind of like exercise. You kind of, once you start to do it, you have to have it every single day, right? Your body doesn't feel good if you're not exercising. And my mind and soul doesn't feel good if I haven't written.
So you're being called to the page.
Yeah, I have just way too much to express and to express the experiences that we have here. Because as you know, it's very rich. Life is very rich within this textured context. And I enjoy it quite a lot. And I also like sharing what life is like from my, American point of view. Whatever that is. It's not, these newsletters, Nouvelle Lettre, are not so much about me. It's about how what I experience can benefit my readers. That's how I see it. So I like to also present ideas to them, make them think about things, not just take them for surface value, but to actually go deeper and think about the things their own opinions, whether they be political or otherwise. And I know that I get myself into hot water when I go into the political arena. But there are just times I can't help myself.
For those out there listening, if you haven't subscribed or read any of Adrian's newsletters, I highly encourage you to sign up. But Adrian, your newsletters and your voice is very candid. And I'm wondering, has it always been candid in writing? I mean, you're there back to the idea of risk. You're not afraid to put your opinion out there.
No, I'm not afraid of much, actually. That's back at the Eckhart Tolle idea of never being fearful. We're only fearful of what we don't know. Right? Of the unknown, what's in our heads. We're not fearful of what exists. I mean, I know if I'm going to write something political, I am going to get a backlash because not everyone's going to agree with me. But the truth is, if you really look deeper at the newsletters, you'll see that I don't voice much of an opinion. I ask a lot of questions. Within those questions, someone might read an opinion. But the truth is that I'm looking for people to dig deeper and look at their own souls and their own opinions and why do they think the way they think, and then to maybe change their viewpoint. Because I'm always questioning those things. I'm trying to look at all sides of the story to gain my own bottom line opinion.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Paris Undressed. So with your business, après-midi, hosting once every month, these newsletters, a television show that you do called House Hunters International, how do you balance it all? I mean, I don't know where I'll be next Tuesday, let alone 4 months from now next Tuesday. How do you organize and balance it all?
Well, I am very highly organized. That would be important, and disciplined in order to get the newsletters written on time, because I have an audience that expects them to be there. So 3 times a week by hook or crook, they have to happen. And as part of that whole idea of focusing, as long as I have allocated that moment to do that thing and focus on that, it gets done, and everything else is just background noise that I'm not going to hear. That's the way to get it done. That's the way to fit a lot in, is by focusing. It's all part of that Eckhart Tolle philosophy. It goes back to that.
This leads perfectly into just if you had any advice to anyone starting their own business in France?
I would tell them not to do it.
Not to
No. You don't want to start a business in France if you can help it, because doing business in France is a nightmare. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. The rules and regulations make it, like being in a straitjacket and being asked to perform somersaults. And you're never going to get rich in France doing it, being in business. But you can eke out a nice living, and you can live very, very well because of the safety net and because of the socialist democracy that it is. But if what you want to do is get rich, you're not going to do it here. But you're going to have a lot more fun, and you're going to feel a lot better about yourself as a result. When my clients come to me and go, well, we're thinking of moving there and starting this business, and it's like, okay, let's do this with your eyes wide open. Yeah. No, because you're going to be at the mercy of the employees.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly share that sentiment, having run a lingerie company for 18 years and being called an entrepreneur, which actually is a French word.
Shocking, isn't it?
Shocking. I was met with very strange looks, like, entrepreneur. Well, oh, you mean you couldn't get a real job? And why would you take the risk? It wasn't ever about, well, that's interesting. What made you want to do that? Or good for you for taking a challenge. It was really a judgment call of why you couldn't get a real job.
Yes, but this is the dichotomy in our cultures. I mean, come on, where we grew up, everyone wants to be working for themselves. That is the way it works, right? We are entrepreneurs from birth. On the French side, you're encouraged to get that job, that CDI contract, so you can't get fired. You'll have it for life. You won't have to think about anything when you go home other than, your own leisure time.
Guaranteed 5 weeks of vacation every year.
Yeah, 14 holidays, you name it. I mean, that's the ideal in this culture. And that's not the ideal in our American culture. So, but you take an entrepreneur like us, okay, and put them in this environment in France, and I contend that we can outthink the French as a result of our ability to think outside the box, whereas they've been taught to think inside the box. And so I see so many Americans be really successful. I mean, look at Craig Carlson, for example. Breakfast in America. All he wanted to do was eat pancakes. He didn't have a clue how to be a restaurateur, but he set out to realize his dream, okay? And he's been hugely successful in that. He now has 2 restaurants called Breakfast Diners, Breakfast in America. He has 2 books out. He's had a very successful run with all of this, even though it's been really difficult with employees and all sorts of other situations. If you've ever read Pancakes in Paris, his first book, you know what struggle it was. But he's still doing his thing and doing it successfully. Mm-hmm. And there are tons of people out there like that, including yourself, for example. It's just, I just think we have the ability to kind of think outside of that box and make it happen.
I mean, I guess with the idea of money, I just always equated it with, if you do a good job, but that's sort of what we've been taught, that's what you get if you do a good job. So here I've had to sort of rejig that thinking, that doing a good job doesn't necessarily mean that money will come.
But if you love what you do and you're doing it not for the money, but because you love what you do, then the money will come. I believe that. And it's happened for me. I mean, it's just, you get in there and you do what you do best and you love it, and it's no longer work, and it makes it all easy and fun. And it does come.
Yeah, it peaks the learning curve. I've been thinking in particular about Pink Bra Bazaar, the breast health charity that I started 10 years ago. It would have been far more successful to have started that in North America by the formula that I would have known, except that formula didn't work here. And now, as a result, with the patience of doing it, I've actually created something much differently, that because of the constraints, and I find this in lots of things too, in writing as well, once you once these rules and maybe back to the straitjacket are in place, you do have to think, as you say, outside differently, and you create something that is different as a result. So it wouldn't have been the same thing. Neither would have the lingerie company or our lives in general had we not moved here. So having to always pull into question why something is or why something isn't just keeps you on your toes.
Definitely. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could have accomplished what I've accomplished here, there. I don't think it would have worked in the same way at all.
I agree.
No,
yeah.
And I think it's because of this environment that made that happen. So in spite of the difficulties in just running a business, keeping employees, trying to eke it out, the challenge of it is fascinating. That's part of it. And that makes us all stronger, better at what we do.
Let's talk about lingerie.
I love lingerie.
Michel de Montaigne said, "Some things are hidden so as to reveal them more." What's in your lingerie drawer?
Oh my, I can't reveal that. That's my biggest drawer.
Well, you love lingerie.
I do. I love lingerie.
Have you always loved lingerie?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about your first bra.
Oh gosh, isn't that hilarious? My first bra. Well, it was tiny. Let's start with that. It was really, really, really tiny. But believe it or not, it was purple and blue plaid. I mean, that's pretty funny, right? That's why
in New Orleans.
Yeah, in New Orleans. That's why I'm laughing, because it's like, I mean, when was the last time you saw a blue and purple plaid bra?
Well, I want to know how you found it. Were you with your
Size
mom?
A, A.
Size A. Okay. Were you with your mother? Were you shopping with a friend? Did you do it by yourself?
I can't remember. No, I'm sorry. That goes way too far back.
But you remember the colors?
Oh, I remember it vividly. Yeah, that. But I don't remember where I acquired it or how.
And do you have we talked about color already, but do you have a favorite bra color that you like to wear?
Black more than anything else.
Okay.
And it's interesting because my mother, who died at the age of almost 98, when we held her 90th birthday, which we had this big event, she confessed to all of us that she was wearing a black bra for the first time in her entire life, that this was like coming out at the age of 90. Okay. Because I suppose that was considered sinful at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like,
or daring.
Like what women wore black bras. And we just all laughed. What do you mean it's your I thought that was really hilarious. What can I say?
And she wanted to share that with you too, with probably a glint in her eye.
Oh, no. She was almost embarrassed to tell us, but this was like a big deal.
Where do you go for lingerie shopping? What are some of your sort of favorite stores in Paris?
Some of the most gorgeous that I can't afford are like Chantal Thomas, magnificent, right? Obad, really, really beautiful. If I'm looking for a bargain, H&M.
Perfect.
Yeah. Bargain lingerie, H&M.
And do you hand wash or machine wash?
Oh, machine wash.
All the way.
Of course.
Yeah.
In lingerie bags, because the wires, the underwires, they come out and they get stuck in your washing machine. And that is not fun. So you don't want to do that.
French expression, dépareillé, meaning mismatched. Do you have a philosophical view on that regarding lingerie?
Oh, I cannot be mismatched. No. I cannot. The bra and the panties have to match.
All right. Is that from a religious upbringing or is this French?
This is French rule. This is a French rule.
This is French rule.
It's one of those French rules. Any Frenchman will tell you, if you're not matched, that is a no-no. It's not okay. No, at least in color, if nothing else. Right? Very important.
So attention to the top and the bottom. It can't be just whatever you pull out of your drawer that morning. There is an aesthetic, right? There's an aesthetic to follow.
Oh, no. They have to match. Yeah.
So that's one rule you're quite happy to follow.
And they do know it. Men do notice it. Not American men, European men.
Are there any garter belts and stockings in that lingerie?
Do I dare admit to that?
This is Paris Undressed.
True. Of course there is. Plenty.
Great. A few questions about life in Paris, in your quotidien. Are you salé or sucré?
Well, I gave up sugar about 5 years ago completely, so that makes me salé.
All right. And your favorite salé? Meaning salted for those of you listening.
I went on this crazy diet about 5 years ago, which was a 30-day diet called the Whole 30, and I've been on it ever since, pretty much. And it eliminates a lot of basic things, unfortunately, like a baguette or a croissant, because it doesn't allow for any grain. So that means no pasta, no rice, no, corn, no things like that. And I do feel a lot better. I feel healthier. I lost weight. And so I've pretty much stuck with that. So I'm not really into eating like chips or snacks like that.
So a moule frite in a bistro, maybe?
Frites are unfortunately on the diet. So frite would be, it's bad. Frites are too good. I mean, how do you pass up a good French fry?
Okay. Coffee or tea, or rather, café au lait, espresso, café court, ou allongé. There's so many choices.
Déca allongé. Décaffiné, allongé, so it's like an American style. Decaf coffee, which sounds awfully boring. Used to be café crème until I gave up cream. I gave up dairy products.
Paris Undressed will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Paris Undressed. And Adrian, what are you curious about right now?
Curious about when is this pandemic going to be out of our lives completely and fully? That's what I want to know. If I could look into the future, I want this to be over so badly. I want our lives to go back to normal.
And what are some new projects that you're working on that we can perhaps have a little tidbit of a avant-premiere? What's going on in the Adrian Leeds group?
How much time have we got? Well, my biggest projects at the moment are fractional ownership properties, which I'm developing several at the moment, and I will be doing more in Paris and in the South as well. And a fractional ownership property is similar to timeshare, but it differs from timeshare in that you as an owner actually own a part of the property itself, and then you share in the usage with the other owners. Whereas in timeshare, you really only own the usage, not the actual property. It's become a very popular way of investing in France because with the new rental laws, and I say new, but they're about 10 years old actually, or more now, it makes it very difficult for someone to own their own apartment and then rent it out on a short-term basis so that they can use it themselves and some of the year and then rent it out the rest of the year and generate a revenue to cover the costs. That's become near to impossible, particularly in Paris. In Nice, you can do it up to 6 years legally, but then after that, you have to stop. These properties give you an opportunity for usage without having the responsibility the rest of the year. And then the cost is a lot lower and it's completely maintenance free because you're sharing that with the other owners. And it's just a wonderful way of having your own little piece, your pied-à-terre, whether it be in Paris or Nice or elsewhere. So I'm working on these and they're coming along well and they're selling well. And Martine Di Matteo is doing the renovation with me. And they're going to be gorgeous.
And Martine is an extraordinary interior designer, visionary in Paris, who does more with a small space than, I don't know, maybe even Versailles could accomplish. So
she's the best. She's the best. And many of my competitors have tried to steal her away from me, but she's completely loyal. We are like sisters. And we've built our businesses together. And her work is just stunning and fabulous. And so I know what kind of a product I can put out thanks to her.
Adrian, it's been a delight speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Complete pleasure on my part. Thank you, Catherine. It's been wonderful, wonderful. And I hope we can do it again. And congratulations to you and to everyone involved in this new podcast project. I think it's fabulous. Bringing people together is always a wonderful thing, especially if we can bring not only the Americans who are living here, but as well as the expatriates out there who wish to live here and want to know more about France. It just doesn't get better than this.
If you're planning a trip to France or want to learn more about the French real estate market, visit Adrian's website, www.adrianleeds.com, or on Instagram @AdrianLeedsGroup. You can also find the links on our episode page. And thank you for listening to Paris Undressed. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share and subscribe so we can continue to connect our stories one bra at a time. Paris Undressed is produced by Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com. Merci and à la prochaine.